Today we stand up to address a global issue, but one that has severe local impacts. Salvador Mendoza from Fresno spent most of his life as a farm worker in the valley. He and his wife, Ricarda, came from Mexico over 30 years ago and started a family. Several years ago, he had to stop working after being diagnosed with a life-threatening idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and a fungal infection in his lungs. He has difficulty breathing every day and has been struggling to keep up with his medical bills. Roy Rivera from Sacramento, who lives just a 10-minute drive from here in Fruit Ridge Manor. He also suffers from a respiratory disease, living with a disability on a fixed income. He and his partner, Roger, have been together for 25 years, and now Roger serves as his caregiver. Roy and Salvador are just two stories among the millions of Californians in the Valley who live in the most polluted communities in the nation. And this is just not a problem for the San Joaquin Valley. Colleagues, 6 major freeways crisscross my district like a serpent that chokes the air out of a child's lungs. Pollution from cars, power plants, oil refineries, and factories makes even the simple act of breathing a struggle. And taxpayers end up paying the bill through constant emergency room visits and lost school and work days. Statewide, asthma. Asthma is the leading cause of absenteeism in our public schools. The cost of business should never be a negative health impacts for our children. This is simply not sustainable, and we need to change course. And that is why, Mr. President, colleagues, I rise today to present Senate Bill 350, the golden standards. For too long, the poor, the working communities, the working class families in our most polluted communities do not have the option to invest in renewable energy and clean, efficient transportation. But that is changing. I actually met Roy and Salvador last month when I visited their homes for a solar panel installation. Roy and Salvador's families are the first of many that will receive free solar panels through a program that uses our cap-and-trade dollars to help our most disproportionately impacted communities in the state of California. They are a growing and highly diverse movement to reduce climate change impacts and eliminate the harmful pollution that so many of our children are struggling today just to breathe. With the sun that is now pouring their home, Roy will save about $1,000 in utility bills this year alone. That amounts to about $22,800 over the course of 30 years. Salvador's family expects to save about 75% on their electricity bills in Fresno. And on top of that, their homes will be less dependent on electricity powered by the dirty fossil fuels that make it harder for them to breathe. Salvador and Roy told me that their energy savings will provide much energy relief, that they will have more money to help treat their lung diseases and meet other everyday needs. We're also getting more clean cars on the roads in the communities that suffer the most from polluted air. Just last week, Lorraine and Jose Mendoza from Stockton, California, got their keys to a new electrical vehicle after we crushed their high-polluting truck right outside the Capitol. Lorena and Jose and their 6 beautiful daughters, all honor class students, now have reliable transportation that will save them almost $3,600 a year in fuel costs. These 3 families provide a glimpse of what a future in renewable energy and cleaner cars look like for the state of California. This is what motivates me, to push our policies and our businesses forward to get us there. Setting these ambitious standards in SB 350 will spur innovation and investment and strengthen California's progress in building a 21st century economy that is sustainable. These standards are reasonable, achievable, and consistent with the framework that we have already established. Now, pollution doesn't recognize partisan lines, and neither has California's leadership on this issue. We passed AB 32 with bipartisan support, and then Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger signed it into law. We're also seeing bipartisan action at the local level. The Honorable Rex Paris, the Republican mayor of the town of Lancaster, helped pass a measure to require that all new homes in this growing community install solar panels. He says his Republican free market principles informed him of this decision because solar power will save Lancaster households 15 to 30% on their utility bills. Leading companies, businesses in California like Apple, Google, Kaiser, KB Homes, Levi Strauss for your 501 Levi jeans, as well as the Gap, and investment giants such as Citicorp and Goldman Sachs all understand that renewable energy is a winning proposition. California already leads the nation in clean tech investment and job creation in the renewable energy sector. We have already proven that we can create jobs that are real, jobs that are tangible, jobs that can't be outsourced or offshored elsewhere. We have already proven we can lower utility bills and rebuild our energy infrastructure, all the while cleaning up the air that we breathe into our lungs and reducing our contribution to climate change. SB 350 will spur even more action from our public officials and our business leaders alike and make sure California keeps leading and building the new economy of tomorrow. A couple points I just want to either perhaps clarify or explain for further explanation, and by all means, offline, we can go a little deeper into the weeds if need be. But on the issue of CARB from the good senator from Orange County, just a couple things I just wanted to explain. Perhaps it would add a little clarification. The 50% in reduction of petroleum use, that requirement appears on page 4, line 20. On page 4, line 19, it does require the petroleum reduction to be cost-effective and technologically feasible. On page 5 of line 12, it requires any actions to be based on validated scientific and engineering data. And lastly, on the issue of CARB, on pages 5, lines 30 through 34, it explicitly requires an economic analysis that takes into account the impacts on fuel manufacturers, consumer acceptance, the state's competitive position with other neighboring states, chiefly Oregon, Washington, Arizona, and Nevada, and the cost to consumers. That is on page 5 of lines 30 and 34. I just want to, just for informational purposes, I think that we have drafted this bill in such a manner that is comprehensive, but parts of it are still ongoing without doubt. More than happy to engage with our colleagues. Now, the idea of the 50% reduction in petroleum use, I think perhaps there's a little misconception that the vast majority of it will actually come from a different formula mix with regards to gasoline itself. There's 3 main ordering principles for CARB. The first one's motor vehicle emission standards, which in short means better efficient engines. I think this is something that we can do with Detroit and we can do with other car manufacturers. We have done so here with Senator Fran Pavley. Her prior legislation helped make engines much more efficient in the country. In fact, if you buy a car in Alabama or Texas or North Dakota or Wyoming, if it's a Ford F-150 and you're up in Montana, those standards are California standards. If you're BMW and you manufacture in a right-to-work state like South Carolina, those standards are California standards. If you are Chrysler or Ford and you manufacture your car in Chihuahua, south of the border of Texas and Mexico, those are California standards that are actually driving the market in the United States of America. You have much more better efficiency with regards to your engine. 2, better mileage. We want better mileage out of the cars that are sold in the state of California. Who doesn't want to have more money in their pockets and actually go farther on a single tank of gasoline? Better efficiency, and more mileage, better mileage for your car. So irrespective if you're from the Central Valley, Imperial Valley, Los Angeles, or San Francisco, who doesn't want more money in their pocket and actually get farther with a single tank of gasoline? So those are the main components right there. Now, with regards to the fuel content specifications, obviously it's about decarbonizing, if you will, gas. Now, a tank of gasoline, a gallon of gasoline or a tank of gasoline, obviously it's 90 to 95% oil petroleum base. What we're asking for is a tiny modest fraction, if you will, with regards to biofuels. Now, this is not to take up the vast majority of your 50% reduction. It is about better efficiency in our vehicles. It's about stretching your dollar farther with maximizing the value of mileage in your car. Those are the current technologies that we're asking Detroit and others to develop in the state of California. And it is quite doable. Obviously, you know, when you take octane, CH8 and H18, and you combine it with atmospheric oxygen, O2, that is the combustion that powers our engine. That creates your carbon, your CO2, your carbon dioxide, and that's water, HO2. That is the power that actually moves goods in the state of California. If you didn't know the chemical, you know, balance in the reaction, what actually moves your Ford F-150 down Highway 99 or 5, that's what actually does right there. So just on the issue of CARB, I just wanted to explain it, and as well as the fuel-specific content, and also I won't get into details about vehicles, vehicle miles traveled, but that's, you know, just a couple important points with regards to the petroleum reduction of 2030. Now, a couple last points I just want to make. I won't get into energy efficiency since it wasn't an issue that we talked about today, but on the RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard, we have made great strides in the state of California. It was mentioned earlier today by the senator from San Francisco that with then Senator Byron Scher, when we talked about a 20% renewable portfolio, everyone thought that the Senate was crazy. It was actually out of reach. It was naive to set unrealistic targets such as 20%. Well, I can say this. We're well on our way to hitting 33% by the year 2020. In fact, if you notice in the details of the analysis, whether it's Republican or Democrat, the IOUs, that being Pacific Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, as well as Sempra, San Diego Gas and Electric, are not in opposition to 350. They have taken a neutral position. In fact, I'm not in a position to share the information. They will share it on their own. But in fact, a few of the IOUs are well on their way to reaching the 33%, not at 2020, but way before 2020, probably in 2017. So the idea of hitting 50% renewable portfolio by the year 2030 is as realistic and as doable as can be. We're actually having very constructive negotiations right now with the IOUs as we speak right now. Very constructive. They want issue of flexibility. The measure provides for flexibility with regards to renewable generation, say, for example, from Wyoming, which is a red state. If you can bring wind in power from Wyoming and it's connected to the grid, Cal ISO, it's acceptable. If you want to bring in and harness the power of the sun from Utah, another red state who wants to export their energy, as well as Arizona, another red state who want to export the power of the sun, if you're connected to the grid, Cal ISO, you can export that to California and we can import it. These are 3 red states. We're getting into the game when it comes to renewable sources. I won't get into the issue of overgeneration, if you will, demand, storage, and energy efficiency, but if you have any questions on those issues, again, I'd be more than happy to explain and go into further detail forensically in the weeds on the issue of overgeneration with regards to the Cal ISO and demand storage as we relate to peak hours when the wind is not blowing and when the sun is not shining. And what do we do to make sure that we provide energy at a low cost to all the ratepayers in the state of California? Colleagues, this is doable. And a couple points lastly I want to make is we talked about coastal elitism, and part of my speech when I opened up my comments was about Salvador Mendoza. And it was about Roy, and it was about the Jose and Lorraine Mendoza. And I do believe strongly, I believe in the arguments that if you had the financial wherewithal to drive a Tesla, and if you actually drew down on a tax credit for Tesla, is that actually fair? Or should we make sure every individual, irrespective of who you are and where you come from, the color of your skin and your region, whether you live in the Imperial or Central Valley, in Compton or East Oakland or East LA, that they have access to credits that they can bundle and they can drive themselves. Or Salinas or Watsonville, where they can drive a vehicle that's affordable, that's electric or a hybrid plug-in, if you will. It's about the policies that we enact on this floor that democratize this process so we do away with the marketplace that today has not corrected the inequities. That's the power of this legislature. Democrats and Republicans working together to move with a sense of intentionality. Because a couple of theses, there was a thesis that was put forth, I think, that I give credence to, that the marketplace as of today hasn't yet been able to correct these inequities. And we talk about winners and losers, but I think that's a canard, because winners and losers already have been selected and chosen. No one talks about the massive subsidies that the fossil fuel industry receives on an annual basis. In fact, just last month, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, produced a report that 6.5% of global GDP, 6.5% of global GDP is dedicated both directly as well as indirectly as a subsidy to the fossil fuel industry. That's $5 trillion. $5 trillion. Those are subsidies. And those subsidies through policies, especially at the federal level, have been selected to pick a winner and a loser. So this is about economic growth. Because as to date, we have created 55,000 brand new jobs in the solar industry. We are projected by the end of this calendar year to create another 10,000. So it'll be 65,000 new jobs. We talk about the economically depressed areas, which are absolutely accurate. Central Valley, Imperial Valley. But to date, I have not seen the fossil fuel industry or any other industry put forth any reasonable economic growth policy for the working men and women of these areas. But when it comes to renewable energy, that is the future. And those jobs are real and those jobs are tangible. And that can bring out, working class people out from poverty, the stubborn poverty that exists, into the middle class. We're talking about creating a new economy for tomorrow because the status quo, quite frankly, is not working. And our children in the Central Valley, whether you're Republican or Democrat, in the Imperial Valley, are breathing into their lungs these harmful toxins and pollutants, which we as taxpayers are subsidizing through the emergency room visits. So it's nonsensical that we continue with the status quo. Now, lastly, again, last weekend we had Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend in Kern County, in the city of Bakersfield, to be exact. Memorial Day weekend, a gallon of gasoline was $3.70. A month ago, it was $3.48. But now it just dropped to $3.66. In Fresno, a month ago, a gallon of gasoline was $3.53. That's regular. Memorial Day weekend, it increased to $3.60. Now all of a sudden, it just dropped back down again to $3.50. And I have city after city after city and county after county after county. Why does gasoline rise all of a sudden during Memorial Day weekend? Well, one can go to Economics 101, supply and demand. I get the supply. Why? No, I get the demand because people are going to travel, during the course of the weekend. But the supply is quite fascinating because it's one of the greatest conundrums that we have today, one of the great mysteries of the world. We have the Bermuda Triangle, we have Roswell, Area 51, and we also have the great mystery. How are gasoline prices actually formulated in the state of California? And why do gasoline prices rise through the roof all of a sudden when there's a refinery maintenance shutdown or there's an explosion at a certain center? So this is about our taxpayers. This is about our constituents. This is about our public health. This is about economic growth. More than happy to work with my Republican colleagues so we can put something together that's bipartisan. They did it in Lancaster, and you have a mayor, a Republican mayor, arch-conservative city, where all city council members are arch-conservatives, Republicans in Texas that have moved forward with the renewable policy because dollars and cents, it makes sense. With that, Mr. President, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator De León. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. No. Bates. No. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. No. Block. Aye. Canella. No. De León. Aye. Fuller. Gaines.
No.
No. Galgiani. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Wesso. Aye. Huff. No. Jackson. Aye. Lada. Aye. Leno. Aye. Leva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. No. Morrell. No. Wynn. No. Nielsen. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Runner. No. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wykowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye. Fuller,
All
no.
absent members.
Galgiani. No. Nielsen. Roth.
Ayes 24, noes 14. Measure passes.